Welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcast and YouTube. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that, let me welcome in my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
Hello, Nate. It's great to be here. It's great to be back with you once again. We've had a lot of people asking, when is Nate and MVG going to record a new episode? And we've heard the cries, we've seen the comments, and we are here, ready to talk.
We are here, ready to talk. And after our sabbatical away, we came back for a proper topic with Nintendo hosting a Nintendo Direct that will be 60 minutes in length and have software for both the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. So naturally, expectations are high for this Direct, as this is the first general Direct hosted by Nintendo since the launch of Switch 2, which took place back in June. We've had a partner Direct in the end of July, where we got to see a sampling of third-party games coming to the Switch family of systems. But now, this should be the time we get the answers regarding Switch software from Nintendo, like Metroid Prime 4, Hyrule Warriors, and what Nintendo's plans are for the rest of 2025, and maybe an early look into their plans of 2026. So a lot of expectation, a lot of hype, a lot of excitement is kind of just bursting for this upcoming Direct. And we are here to give some of our thoughts and predictions as to what possibly could be shown at this Nintendo Direct. And I think our expectations are very realistic. And I think there's also some that may surprise people and get them excited. But of course, want to stress these are predictions, not leaks. So don't make headlines. Don't view these as spoilers. These are just predictions of what we think may be shown at this upcoming Nintendo Direct. But how are you feeling about this upcoming General Direct, MVG? Are you excited for what Nintendo and third-party partners have planned for us?
Well, I am excited, Nate. I think, the Switch 2 has had a pretty strong launch launch window. But the last time we talked about the Switch 2 in our previous episode, we kind of felt like maybe things weren't as strong as we had hoped, right? So having this Direct really will shore up a lot of not only third parties, what they're doing, but what Nintendo's plans are as well. So this is a very important Direct. I mean, we always say, a Direct is very important. It gives us a look into what's coming. But honestly, this is really one of the biggest Directs that I can think of, because it really will kind of set the pace for the Switch 2 going into this year, or for the remainder of this year, I should say. And like you said, going into next year. So I think it's going to be a good one. It's obviously 60 minutes long, so it's going to be stacked with a lot of games, I would imagine. And hopefully the pacing is good, where we see a lot of titles get announced. But we've come up with, our thoughts as well. And we've got quite a bit of things that we think, will potentially or could show up. But like you said, Nate, this is a predictions episode. We have no idea what's coming. We like to speculate, and normally, we'll use informed ideas and guesswork going into these things. But this is a prediction. So outlets, don't quote our predictions, because we don't know.
See, to the point you made earlier, that this could be a tone setter for the Switch 2. Because when you look at the first year of new hardware, be it Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they always use their presentations within that opening 12 to 18 months to show you what the future has, to sell you on promise and future promise. And if we go back to the original Switch, we had quite an offering of future promise. One of those future promises will finally be fulfilled with Metroid Prime 4. It took an entire console generation.
Yep.
But Metroid Prime 4 was one of those early appetizers of saying, hey, if you invest in the system, this is a game you're going to be getting on it. And we also had games like Bayonetta 3 that were announced very early on. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of long-term offerings, if any, Nintendo could do at this particular Nintendo Direct. because right now it has felt as though the Switch 2 is definitely an extension of the Switch. It hasn't
Yeah.
really kicked into gear that it's its own thing, even though it has had exclusives, but it still feels as though this is just a continuation of the Switch in a lot of ways. So I want to see if this is going to be that moment where Nintendo doesn't fully abandon the Switch 1, as we know the Switch 1 is going to have a presence here. But will we begin to see that shift from Nintendo and third party partners towards the Switch 2 as their preference? And we just see some of those smaller titles still come to Switch 1, but we really get a long distant look into what would be coming to the Switch 2 in terms of exclusives. And I think if Nintendo can set a good tone and promise of the future of what the Switch 2 as a platform is going to be, this could be a very memorable direct for not just Nintendo, but also for the fans to look back at in well regard, similar to what we had with the Wii U, that famous January direct where you had
Hmm.
Xenoblade Chronicles X, you had a new Yoshi game, you had the SMT Fire Emblem crossover, which eventually became Tokyo Mirage Sessions. But that direct is something that is well revered because it showed so much promise and hype of what the Wii U could be. Ultimately, the Wii U failed, but it set the tone of, okay, this could be a very exciting system. And I'm curious to see if Nintendo does that here, or if it feels as though Nintendo's just continuing on from the Switch and, hey, here's some exciting new games coming from Switch 2. And it just goes with the flow. Nice, seamless flow from the Switch into transitioning to Switch 2. So I'm curious to see how Nintendo really bridges this gap.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up a good point about the Switch as well that I wanted to mention. And that is, we have a pretty good understanding that the Switch is not going to go away anytime soon. But I also feel like we'll get a better idea about how much longer Nintendo is planning to support the Switch One based on this direct itself. Obviously, again, we know that Metroid Prime is coming. There are games slated for Switch One. We know that. But I also feel like, if we take a look at the percentage of the games that are available for Switch One at this direct, and if that percentage is pretty low, then we can start to make some accurate determinations on when we think end of life for Switch One is coming. Nintendo obviously wants to support it for as long as they can, but we'll definitely learn more about what that looks like, I think.
Yes, I mean, we know some of the games coming to Switch 1 with cross gen games. We know Nintendo's already detailed some Switch 1 games going into 2026. But we should definitely see that break from some of the announcements being made at this general direct, or at least ideally, we see that break be made. But let's start with some third party predictions for this general direct. And I think a good place to start is with 505, as they announced this game, I believe it was last year at a Sony State of Play. And I'm referring to Bloodstained, the Scarlet Engagement. We know Bloodstained had come to the Switch, ran a little rough, needed
Hmm.
numerous patches. And this is definitely a more ambitious title. But when it was announced last year, obviously you couldn't announce Switch 2 games yet because the platform hadn't been announced. I think this is a good venue for it, especially when you factor in the close proximity to the Tokyo Game Show. I think a title like Bloodstained, The Scarlet Engagement being announced for Switch 2 makes a lot of sense for this direct. And I'm anticipating that it will be there.
Yeah, this is a good prediction. I like Bloodstained. This, like you said, the Switch version was a little bit rough around the edges. But yeah, an updated or a new Bloodstained for Switch Two is a good pick. It's a great game. So I'd love to see this one get announced at the direct for sure.
I want to go to Atlas because Atlas feels as though they always have a presence, be it in a Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo showcase. And Sega has already been a very adamant supporter of the Switch 2. And even Atlas already has a game on the platform. We also have Persona 3 coming out later this year. But one title that has not been announced for the Switch 2 yet that I think will be announced for Switch 2 in this direct is Metaphor Refantasio. And I think the game will hit Switch 2 before 2025 concludes. So I think this is going to be a fairly quick release or reveal to release window on this game. The game had earned Game of the Year nominations last year when it released on PlayStation and Xbox. So I think you bring it to Switch 2, it's going to speak to a new audience. I think there'd be a lot of double dip interest, and I think the game would sell exceptionally well, not only in the West, but also in Japan. So makes a lot of sense to announce that game for the platform now.
I never played Metaphor when it came out, Nate, but I've heard really, really good things about it. A lot of people, like you said, kind of put it in the conversation for their game of the year. So yeah, this is a big game. And it I mean, I can't see any way it would not show up on the Switch too. I guess the only thing that I'll say is maybe not at this direct, but look, I think it's probably going to show up. And if it does, I'll probably pick it up. I've never played it before. Have you played Metaphor?
I played about 10 hours of it. It's one of those RPGs that requires so many hours of dedication
A lot of grinding.
that I simply fell off from it because other games of interest came out and I just
Yeah,
never went back.
I think I would pick it up on the Switch too. It's a good prediction as well. And I mean, it'll do very, very well on the Switch too. So yeah, it's hard for me to imagine that this game is not a part of the Switch 2's plans.
Yeah, I mean, Atlas has been a very, very strong supporter of the system. They've also been very vocal of wanting to embrace that cross or that multi-platform approach with their games moving forward. So I would imagine, given the strength of the Switch 2 in the Japanese market and even worldwide so far, that if they can bring the game or any game to the platform, they will be doing so. And given that Persona 6 still isn't ready for release, porting Metaphor ReFantasio to the Switch 2 in the interim makes a lot of sense, especially as I said prior, we have Persona 3 coming later this year. So it just feels like get a nice flow of releases, introduce the Switch 2 base to Atlas, and then eventually when Persona 6 is there and comes to Switch 2, you have built a strong fan base where you can cater that game to. And Metaphor is a great way to do so. Now, I want to go to Bandai Namco because they have been in the headlines recently, but not for good reason. And that's because Elden Ring demoed exceptionally poor at Gamescom, but then at PAX West, people were saying the demo seemed improved. And the representatives from Bandai Namco at PAX West did say it's a newer build than what was shown at Gamescom. But even when you look at the PAX West footage, you could still see some frame drops. It definitely wasn't perfect performance. It wasn't a lock 30. But we need a release date for this game. Do you think Elden Ring will make an appearance at the Direct and be given a release date?
I think yes to both. And I think it's going to be 2025 as well. I mean, there may be a some idea that it could get bumped to next year to basically polish it more because like you said the Gamescom representation of that game was not good. Look, I even looked at the PAX footage, Nate, and it did look better, but also it's hard to kind of tell the difference between both of those based on kind of just the third party kind of footage that was taken. As far as I know, and you tell me, was there any direct captures ever taken of Elden Ring? I don't believe there was, right? Like I think it was just all people sticking a camera in front of the display.
Correct. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was no direct capture permitted at PAX West or
Yep.
Gamescom.
So look, I have over 200 plus hours in Elden Ring on the PlayStation 5. The game is not perfect. It does drop its frame rates, but it does target 60 frames per second on the PS5 Pro. It hits it almost all the time. There's issues though, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. But look, what they showed at Gamescom and to a lesser extent PAX was not great. But I also feel like maybe they just want to kind of stick to the plan and get this game out this year. So I think that Elden Ring will probably come out in 2025. I don't think this is cause for them to delay the game. They probably knew going into these shows, Nate, to be completely honest, that it wouldn't be the best showing because look, people, like the developer knows when the game isn't performing very well or there are issues, right? So they kind of went in knowing exactly what to expect, what people were going to say about this game. I think they were kind of ready for that type of feedback. So with that in mind, I think that the game is probably still going to come out this year. They're probably doing what they can to get it ready for day one, and maybe there is another, or a day one patch that will come out that will improve it a little bit more. But I feel like the game just has to come out at this point. So I'm going to say it's 2025.
I think the one thing that people seem to forget when it comes to titles like an Elden Ring is that even though they said it's a newer build at PAX West, we don't necessarily know how new that is.
Right.
It could still be a 6-month-old build.
Yep.
And let's say the game does come out this year, it's very likely the game is going to be a game key card release. And what that does allow the publisher and developer is more time because you don't have to worry about going gold and slapping a specific version onto that game card to go into manufacturing because it's a key.
Yeah.
You have pretty much up to release day to fine tune and polish the game. So, depending on when the game comes out this year, they could potentially still have 1, 2, 3 months of polish time to get the game ready because you can get the game key cards ready now, but there is no version of the game on that game key card.
Right. That's exactly
So,
right.
so there's a lot of time for them to really address some of the shortcomings. Though, I do wonder how much they are taking the feedback and saying, okay, what do we have to address here? Because based on some of the impressions, it did sound as though the game's visuals were very in line with the quality mode that we would see on like the Xbox or the PlayStation. It's just that the performance
Yeah.
that we were seeing was from performance mode, and the Switch 2 edition of Elden Ring doesn't have any toggle to go between performance or quality mode. It's just one option. So ideally, they are able to smooth out that performance a bit more, especially in handheld mode before release. But I am in agreement with you. I did think the game will come out before the year concludes. It's just a question of, I don't know if I could necessarily predict an exact month right
Right.
now as to when the game's coming out. Like if I had to on the spot say, I'd say maybe maybe November, December. I mean, part of me does think it gets delayed until like February, but I think having it this year would make a strong impact going into holiday sales to have a game of that caliber on the platform. But
I think the hope is before the end of this year. I like your November month personally. I think for me that's when I kind of was thinking they would date it. Look, they could delay it for next year, and polish it up and maybe try to get it at a locked 30 frames per second everywhere or something. But I don't know. Like this is a big game for From, and it's also something that potentially could sell very well for the holidays. So I don't think they
right.
want to miss that window unless they absolutely have to. And um, but yeah, it's an interesting one because Elden Ring is a game where really, it could do very very well on Switch too. So they definitely don't want to be in a situation where it's just not a good port and it turns people away. But I think they'll probably just do enough, Nate, to get this game ready for like November, maybe December of this year.
I think if they could have the game running at a stable enough frame rate, even if it does hover from 22 to 30 and it fluctuates constantly with poor frame pacing, I think they would still ship it because this is a FromSoft game. None
Yeah.
of them are technically competent. The games always have performance issues. So I think as long as they can look at it and say, this is good enough, you can play it, it's playable, which we have heard from individuals who demoed the game at PAX West. They did say the game was playable. Now, to individuals who have played Elden Ring maybe for 200, 300 hours, we would say differently. But if it's playable enough that they feel comfortable shipping it and then patching it along the way, I think they will try to get it out before the holiday for those sales, as mentioned. And, I'm going to be greedy and I'm going to add another FromSoft related prediction
Mm.
from Bandai Namco, even though I know it's not going to come true. Armored Core Fire of Rubicon. It's a game I loved on the Xbox when I played it when it came out. And I would just enjoy having it in a portable setting. I doubt it will happen because they seem preoccupied with other projects like Elden Ring, also Duskblood coming exclusively to Switch 2. So I don't think Armored Core is necessarily a high priority for them, but I would love to see it happen. Do you have any other predictions for Bandai Namco from
Well,
yourself?
I'm going to counter your Armored Core prediction, and I'm going to say Ace Combat 7 Switch 2 Edition will be there. So Ace Combat 7 is a fantastic game in the Ace Combat series. The music is incredible. The action is phenomenal. If you like Ace Combat 7, if you like Ace Combat, you'll love Ace Combat 7. Now, the Switch version of Ace Combat 7.8 was actually pretty decent. It was I don't want to say it was impossible port territory, but it was pretty close. It was a very, very good port, a very ambitious one, and they pulled it off for the most part. But what I'd like to see is a Switch 2 edition of Ace Combat 7 running at 60 frames per second with no compromise. And I think they could pull it off. So I like Ace Combat 7 Switch 2 edition. So yeah, I'm going to will that one into existence.
I'm going to bring up another Bandai Namco franchise only because we kind of were reintroduced to it back at the Switch 2 launch with NSO. I'm referring to Soul Calibur. Now, we have seen comments from Harada saying that it would be very difficult to port over Tekken. But
Yep.
what if there was a brand new Soul Calibur game in development? We're right around Tokyo Game Show. Soul Calibur has been absent for just around a decade now, and quite a while. What are the odds you think we see a brand new Soul Calibur game get announced at this direct?
I'm going to say very high because I would love to see it. So I'm just going to, like I always do in the situation, just going to will it into existence and say yes to everything.
Can you
So,
really say the odds are high if you have to will it into existence?
well, okay. So if I'm being realistic, Nate, it's probably not going to happen. And I'll tell you why. Because Soul Calibur hasn't been relevant for a very, very long time. It's hard for me to imagine that Bandai Namco are going to be like, yes, let's bring it back. Now, the GameCube NSO thing aside, I don't know. It's all Tekken right now, and obviously Tekken is a lot more challenging given the fact that it's using Unreal Engine 5. I mean, potentially they could give us Tekken 7, but no one's going to care if Tekken 7 comes out to the Switch 2. So, I mean, maybe I'll give it an outside chance, but hey, I'll still will it into existence.
You are unfortunately correct that Soul Calibur hasn't had relevance in quite a while. I would argue that it hasn't had relevance since Soul Calibur 4,
Yep.
which was when we had Yoda and
Yeah.
some interesting crossover characters. And I know one of them later did have a Witcher crossover. Was that Soul Calibur
I
6?
think it was 6. Yeah.
But the series definitely felt as though it peaked with Soul Calibur 2. And then it began, when it began its decline? When they made the baffling decision to make Soul Calibur 3 PlayStation 2 exclusive.
That's right. That's right.
Like, after
Yeah.
having so much success of Soul Calibur 2 being on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, they brought it as a console exclusive to PlayStation 2, and I think
Mhm.
that hurt the franchise a lot. And since then, it just never felt as though it's fully recovered. It's still a very good mechanical fighting game, but Tekken has risen from the ash and it sells far more copies than Soul Calibur would. Street Fighter is back to being a very dominant force in fighting games. And now you have new experimental games coming from Arc System Works, like a new Marvel game
Yep.
that Sony is publishing. So I just don't know if there is a place in the market for Soul Calibur as much as I would love to see a brand new Soul Calibur game.
Yeah, I agree.
But speaking of Street Fighter, it is time to give predictions for Capcom because Capcom has been a very loving supporter of the Switch 2 up to now. We have Street Fighter 6, we have Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess, both at launch. And it seems as though Capcom just loves the Switch and Nintendo. So, what type of games could we be seeing from Capcom at this direct?
Well, I think the low hanging fruit obviously are the RE engine games. And at this point, it's basically take your pick. Which one do you think will be there? And here's what I think is going to be there. So I will preface this by saying that I think all the RE Engine Resident Evil games will eventually show up to Switch 2. I think it's a fair thing to say. So we're talking about, RE2 Remake, 3, 4 Remake, 7 Village, RE9 as well will get announced at some point. But not everything will be at this direct, of course. I mean, they have to, can't just show your entire hand in one go. I personally think, Nate, there'll be one game kind of from the modern Resident Evil series, we'll call it, and one from the throwback remake series as well. So I'm going to say, personally, I think RE7 is going to be at this direct, and I'm going to say RE2 remake will make its appearance. And I will probably double dip on RE2 remake if it shows up on the Switch 2, personally.
I am in agreement with you on RE7 being at this direct, but I am in disagreement with the throwback Resident Evils, as you said.
Okay.
I think Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 will be announced together. I think they would offer them as a bundle, as they do on other systems, and ideally at a budget price of, let's say, $40 or $50. And like these games are coming to Switch 2.
Yeah.
That's not a question. But like these games are coming. Resident Evil 2, 3, 7, these are Switch 2 bound. It's just a question of when will they be announced and when will they release. And from what I've been told, games like Resident Evil 2 and 3 are going to have feature parity with the PlayStation and Xbox version. And you might say, what does that mean? Well, it means ray tracing.
Yep.
It means 120 support. Now, if you include some motion aiming for the Switch 2 using the gyro aiming of the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, could be the definitive way to play Resident Evil 2, 3,
Hey,
at least in my opinion.
remember
that would get me to double dip.
Remember Resident Evil 4 on the Wii?
Best way to play.
Absolutely.
Made the game trivial, but I loved it.
Yeah, I think if they put the care and attention that you suggested into these games on Switch 2, and there's no reason why they couldn't, like you said, making parity with PlayStation 5 and Xbox, and then add Switch 2 enhanced additions with regards to mouse control, gyro, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something where I would consider jumping on board with. And if you said that they have like a double pack of 2 remake and 3 remake, I would definitely buy that. I'd be all over that one.
Yeah, I mean, they do have that as a dual pack on the other systems for a budget price. So I think they almost have to do that when you bring them to Switch 2, because Capcom has to be realistic here. You can't sell those games individually for $40 or $60 because you can get these games for $10 routinely on other platforms. So even with the portable attraction, you still have to create incentive and make it enticing for people to double or even triple dip. And yeah, having feature parity in terms of visuals and such aren't going to be enough. And even like motion controls aren't going to be enough. You have to offer it at a budget price. So I think if you can do a dual bundle for like $40, because they're going to be digital or a game key card anyways. We have to be realistic here. It's very unlikely that we're going to get both games on a single game card at retail. So give us that incentive with the budget price. And I'd be there day one. I love Resident Evil 2. And yes, Resident Evil 3 has some shortcomings. But the problem with Resident Evil 3 was never the game itself. It's that it wasn't worth the asking price when it launched.
It's just the length of the game.
And it still takes, it can still take you 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's not as though it's like a 2-hour game.
If you don't know what you're doing, it'll take you 8 hours. If you do know what you're doing, you could probably knock it out in about 4 to 5.
Yeah, I think there was an achievement and a trophy tied to like beating it in 2.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
But like I had purchased Resident Evil 3 Remake I believe it was on sale digitally for something like 9.99 or maybe $20. Picked it up, lasted through it in a week or so. I was like, that was a lot of fun. I don't know why people were so against this game. And yes, it's not as good as the original Resident Evil 3. It has missing content, but I think it was just that pricing really put off a lot of people. But the game is quality, so you bring it to Switch 2 at a fair price. I think it would sell exceptionally well because that could look beautiful in handheld mode.
Oh yeah.
And I would love to go through Raccoon Police Department in a handheld setting, especially with that 3D audio that the Switch 2 offers with headphones. Be really,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say really scary. They're not scary games, but it could be quite immersive and fun. So I'm going to add a couple more predictions from Capcom here beyond the Resident Evil games. I'm going to say Ace Attorney 7 is
Yep.
going to make an appearance here because, again, it's close to Tokyo Game Show. This feels like that type of game Capcom would announce. Maybe if it's not at the Direct, maybe they announce it at Tokyo Game Show. But I think sometime this month we see Ace Attorney 7. I'm also going to predict something that will probably never happen because Capcom is going to Capcom. Mega Man 12. Yes, laughter is usually the response that type of thing would get.
I don't.
But Mega Man 11 did very well for Capcom when it came out.
It did. It did very well for Capcom when it came out. I like Ace Attorney 7, Nate. I think you're definitely on the right track there. I think Capcom has completely forgotten about Mega Man personally.
But they just told their investors that Mega Man is very important to them.
Well, they did. But that could mean a lot of things. That could mean merchandise. It could mean that Mega Man shows up as DLC in some other game or something. I don't know. Do you really think Capcom is building a fully fledged Mega Man 12 that uses the RE engine? I mean, they did the Ghouls and Ghosts thing a couple of years ago, or Ghosts and Goblins.
They did. Nobody bought it.
No one bought it.
Me.
I guess it's possible. I'm gonna say absolutely to Ace Attorney. Probably not for Mega Man. I'm gonna kind of put that in the Soul Calibur pile.
All right. I mean, I'd say that's fair. It is Mega Man. Mega Man's been missing for a while. Mega Man gets no love from Capcom. But I'm telling Capcom to give Mega Man some love, make Mega Man 12. And the fans will show minimal love for Mega Man 2. But now I want to go to CD Projekt Red, as I know you are a fan of them. I believe you tried Cyberpunk on the Switch too to see if you would become a fan of the game now, despite having hated it when it came out originally. Any luck on that front?
I still hate it. I think I've mentioned this before, Nate. I've tried this game multiple times. I've tried to get into this game multiple times. I bought it on the PlayStation 4 when it launched, and you remember what a disaster that was. So that was a terrible start. And then I bought the many years later, I bought the complete edition on the Xbox Series. I think it was like maybe 2 years ago now or 18 months ago. And I tried to start it again. I played for about 5 hours. Didn't like it. When the Switch 2 came out, they announced Cyberpunk 2077 Switch 2 edition, or the Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk. And with the Phantom Liberty DLC, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to just jump into the Phantom Liberty DLC because I've heard it's really, really good. People are saying amazing things about it, how it kind of transformed Cyberpunk for them. So I started playing the Phantom Liberty DLC, played about 4 or 5 hours of that. And I have decided, it took me 3 attempts, I have decided that Cyberpunk is not for me. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. People don't like that take. I know a lot of people like Cyberpunk, but I've tried it many times. I just can't get into the game.
I mean, I've tried it many times. I can't get into the game. And I mean, outside of Witcher 3, I haven't really enjoyed any CD Projekt Red game. So you think CD Projekt Red shows up at this direct in any form? They were there at launch. Do you think maybe they have something else coming to the platform in the near future?
I do, and maybe this goes into the Mega Man Soul Calibur pile, but I think they'll show up with a Witcher Switch 2 edition update. I don't think it's going to be anything big. I think it's just going to be an enhanced version of Witcher that runs on Switch 2 that has an improved frame rates and potentially resolution boost as well. But look, I say this because back in the days when I used to overclock the Switch, you can get Witcher running at 60 frames per second. So I think this is a situation where someone at CD Projekt Red, maybe just a small team, could have been tasked to just update the game and get it ready for Switch 2 with not much effort on their end. So I like a Witcher update. It's sold very well. Cyberpunk is selling well. So a 60 FPS Witcher on Switch 2 makes a lot of sense to me.
Another company who is finding success on the Switch 2 is Electronic Arts. They have found success with Madden, at least based on eShop rankings and some individuals claiming how many players are online, though that hasn't been completely verified whether or not that's specific to Switch 2 and not just the universal Madden pool. But EA is finding success on the platform with Madden and Split Fiction, and just a matter of time before EA further supports the platform. And I'm going to predict that we will see Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is the complete trilogy of games, come over to Switch 2. I think it would be a good home for that franchise and that trilogy. I think people would be very interested in playing Mass Effect on the go. And I'm also going to go with the two Star Wars games, which are Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. I think both of those games would also perform well on the Switch 2. And we just had Star Wars Outlaw come out from Ubisoft on Switch 2, and it is in the top 3 on the eShop chart. So fans seem to be responding well to the game. The game received numerous patches since the game launched late last year. And I think if EA were to bring their Star Wars games over alongside Mass Effect, they would find an audience willing to engage with them. So those are my predictions for EA at this particular direct. Whether or not these happen, hey, we'll find out. But I think it would definitely be a good showing from EA to bring those games to the platform, as EA is often viewed as one of the worst publishers in the industry. But I think bringing those games to a Nintendo platform would generate a lot of interest and it would do well for them. And it would definitely give a little confidence into the level of support that EA would show a Nintendo system. Because right now, outside of Madden, I believe the only other game that they have announced for it is the Football Club and Plants versus Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Nintendo fans want to see a little more commitment from EA with some of their bigger, more revered franchises.
I'm going to mostly agree with your predictions here. I think Mass Effect Trilogy, what's it called? Mass Effect Legendary Edition?
Yes.
Yes. That's something that I could definitely see show up at this direct. I'd like to think that it's in development for sure. It's just a matter of when we'll see it. For me, that's a no-brainer. I think that's money on the table for the taking. So if you bring out that Mass Effect, Legendary Edition on Switch 2, a lot of people are going to buy it. I think it'll do really well. I like Star Wars Fallen Order. I think that's a very good prediction to make. I have some pause though, Nate, with Jedi Survivor, and not because I don't think it wouldn't be Switch 2 bound. My only concern with Jedi Survivor is that game has had a very rough development cycle where it basically still doesn't run very well on PC and Xbox and PlayStation. It's just, for whatever reason, there's just been a lot of struggles getting that game to run at a decent clip. It kind of just is all over the place. So with that in mind, I think that while there is maybe a Switch 2 version that's in development, maybe that'll just get held back a little until they get this thing figured out. But aside from that, I think your EA predictions are good.
You do have to keep in mind that Jedi Survivor did come to PlayStation 4.
That's true. It did.
They did do that in quotes downport of the
Yeah.
game. What was it, a year or two after the game had originally launched on PS5 and Xbox Series.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you could use that build as the foundation
Yeah.
for the Switch 2, but man, I think it would do well if EA could bring it over. Now, this next prediction is a game that you're considering your game of the year potentially.
It's definitely in the conversation. I don't know if it's my game of the year, because we still have Metroid and other things to come. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a game that I think is coming to the Switch 2 for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Kingdom Come Deliverance is already available on the Switch, and it's a good port overall. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is what's one of the highest rated games of this year. It's a very good game. A lot of people love that series, love that franchise. And I can't see any reason why it wouldn't show up on the Switch 2, Nate. I think again, like Mass Effect and the various other games, the RE games, if it doesn't come to Switch 2, you're leaving money on the table. And there's no reason technically that this game isn't possible on Switch 2. So I like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's been out for a while. I mean, I think the original game came out, I want to say in January or February. It was early February. So it's been a little bit of time. Of course, it all depends on if the developer has Switch 2 dev kits and all that sort of stuff. But I'm just going to assume they do, and I'm just going to assume that they're bringing this game to Switch 2. So KCD2 for me at the direct.
I do agree that the game will find its way to Switch 2, but as you said, whether the developers have dev kits, whether they were doing an in-house or outsourced port, not sure if the timing is right for an announcement of the game, but I do think it's just an inevitability before Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 does find its way to Switch 2. If not at this direct, maybe sometime in 2026, it will find its way over. Now, I want to go to Konami as they did just release Metal Gear Solid Delta on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And, the game, again, just reiterating, it is coming to Switch 2. It's just a matter of when. When is the port ready? When will Konami do it? When will they announce it? And, just again, with that Japanese publisher type of concept, we're in close proximity to Tokyo Game Show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Konami. The game's out now. It has sold 1 million copies. Is this the right time and place to announce intent to bring it to Switch 2? I want to say yes because I
Yeah,
want the game to be announced.
I think so, right? I mean, I don't know how far in development the Switch 2 version would be and when it would possibly release. But I think you do announce a Switch 2 Metal Gear Solid Delta version leading up to Tokyo Game Show. I think at a direct, it kind of makes sense to me. There's still quite a lot of momentum around Delta. I will say it's tapering off a little bit for the most part, but like I don't know. I like. I mean, I think that Delta absolutely exists for Switch 2, so you have to go ahead and announce it at a direct, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would just kind of generate a little more interest in the game, even if it is coming out in, let's say, 6 or 12 months. Because as you said, interest in the game does seem to be tapering off. It didn't seem to have landed with a big impact. It hit, interested parties purchase the game or have opted to wait for it to go on discount. Or maybe they're waiting for the multiplayer to get patched in later this year. And then they may purchase the game. And maybe that's what they're going to wait for the Switch 2 version. They're going to wait until that multiplayer is up and running. So when they do release it on Switch 2, it is content complete.
Yeah.
So that could potentially throw a little wrinkle in the prediction if they want to wait for something like that. But I hope they announce it very soon, as I am curious to see how it would run on the Switch 2. and just to see the interest that would be there. Now, speaking of Metal Gear Solid, we have to talk about its creator, Hideo Kojima. And a prediction I want to give is that the original Death Stranding will be announced for Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, this game is almost everywhere at this point, right? Like it's running on, isn't it running on like Mac and iOS and all these
Yeah,
other
it's
devices.
it's on like iPads and iPhones, and it's basically on everything.
So, which tells us that there is an ARM version for, portable devices that is running exceptionally well. So obviously the engine is very well optimized, right, to run on a different variety of devices. So based on that, Death Stranding on the Switch 2, I mean, it's just a matter of when, right? I feel like rather than if it's actually going to come or if it's going to show up. I like Death Stranding for this direct, Nate. I think it's a good prediction.
It's one of those games that I would certainly consider well, it'd actually be triple dipping. I had originally played it on the PS4, then I played it on PS5, then I played it on Xbox Series when it came over last year. So if it came to Switch 2, I'd probably consider getting it again, but I think it may depend on the release format. If it was digital only, I would have to see a nice launch discount, similar to what they did on the Xbox, where they launched the game at $20.
Yeah.
That's that impulse buy territory for me.
And we'd
So if
want
they
the
did
director's
similar,
cut as well, like the whole thing with
right,
all the bells and whistles.
right. If you do that on the Switch 2 for $20, it's impulse buy. I probably do it. If it's higher than that, I probably wait for a discounted version. But I think it would be a great get for the system. Have portable Death Stranding, I think would cater to a lot of people. And I think there would be an interested market on the platform of individuals who never played Death Stranding, even though it's on every device outside of microwaves. But it's one of the most ported games since Skyrim.
Hmm.
But if you somehow haven't played it and you want to switch to, I think this game may be of interest to you. But now, another major game that is not yet on Switch 2, but we both are anticipating it will be, is Larian's Baldur's Gate 3. This is a game I thought was going to be pretty much in the launch window. I would say like in that first month or two. And the game still hasn't been announced for the platform. But I think this General Direct is a good venue for it. I think this is where, if you're Larian, you want to announce Baldur's Gate 3, it's coming to Switch 2, and probably have it out before the year concludes if it's possible.
Yeah, again, I think this is one of those games that I feel like is absolutely in development. It's just a matter of when we'll see it. And it's hard to kind of predict, if it will come out this year, Nate. Maybe there's just been some technical reasons why it's not available. I'm not saying that the Switch isn't capable. Sorry, the Switch 2 isn't not capable of running the game. But what I'm saying is, it's a big game, right? We heard stories that Larian was having difficulty running it on the Series S, which they managed to address now. So maybe it's just a matter of they've had difficulty, or not difficulty, but they've had some adjustment getting used to the Switch 2 hardware. But I think again, this is a matter of when rather than if this game exists. I think it does exist. Yeah, look, I like Baldur's Gate 3 for this direct, and for release before the end of this year. Why not? I could see that absolutely happening.
Keep in mind that the game did shadow drop on the Xbox at the Game
It
Awards.
did, didn't it? I forgot about that. You absolutely right.
Well, I mean, it's justifiably that you forgot about it, as Larian itself forgot to announce the game at
That's
the Game
right.
Awards.
That's right.
So
That's right. that
they
was
meant
that
to
was a
do it
crazy.
during
That was
their
a
award.
that was a crazy time. I remember that.
Yep. And like the Game Awards ended, a tweet was out saying, "Oh yeah, game's available on Xbox right now. We forgot to announce it." Oh, that's it's not how drops are supposed to work. You're supposed to announce the game. But hey, maybe we see a repeat here. I don't think they would shadow drop a game of that caliber for the Switch 2 at this stage, but hopefully the game can come out before the year concludes, as that is a significant get for the platform, and I think a lot of Baldur's Gate fans would consider double dipping. I want to go to Level 5 as Level 5 is a very interesting company. They had outlined a very diverse and rich lineup of games for 2025, and then several of them got delayed into 2026. But one title remains hopeful for 2025, and that is Professor Layton. And if the game's coming out this year, it has to be shown and given a release date at this direct. It has to be there. If it's not, then I don't believe that game's coming out this year.
Well, I will tell you now, I don't know anything about Professor Layton. It's definitely not my bag at all. So I'm just going to piggyback on what you're saying and say yes to everything that you say.
You're not a fan of puzzle games?
I mean, I like Lemmings. I like Tetris. I am a fan of puzzle
Okay.
games, but
Slightly different puzzle games. Not quite Professor Layton caliber puzzle games, but puzzle games nonetheless. Yeah, this is a game they haven't delayed yet. And I mean, they have announced games in Nintendo Directs. So this kind of feels as though this is the opportunity to give it a release date for this year. It has to be there in some form. Even if it's not coming out this year, it feels like they have to show it. So come on, Level 5, deliver something. That brings us to Microsoft. Microsoft is slowly becoming the industry's biggest third party publisher. And at Gamescom just a couple of weeks ago, they announced that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle will be coming to Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026. And it kind of feels as though if they have any upcoming games, they have to eventually have direct placement.
Yep.
Do you think Microsoft will be in this Nintendo Direct?
I do. I do think so, Nate. I think maybe we felt like they would show up at the partner showcase, but they did not. And I feel like their absence wasn't because we got it wrong or we didn't, like anything like that. I just feel like maybe they were just holding their cards just for a little while longer for this. I do agree that Microsoft will have showings at Nintendo Directs going forward. And it starts with this one. So I think you mentioned Indiana Jones. We did get a look at it at Gamescom, but we may get a more of extended gameplay trailer at this direct. I could definitely see that. Like, I feel like Microsoft, they, even though Indiana Jones is a very, very good game, there's probably still a lot of people that are on the Switch ecosystem that, they're aware of the game, but they haven't really seen too much of it. And while Gamescom, is one thing, opening night live and having an audience there, this is a Nintendo Direct. And you want your trailers on a direct because there's going to be literally millions of people watching your direct and watching your game. So I think Indiana Jones will have more of a showing at the direct, but I also think there's more games that Microsoft could potentially show up with. And again, low hanging fruit, but Call of Duty is another game. We saw Apex Legends get released recently, so we know that the system is capable of these big, battle royale style games. It's capable, right? We do know that Microsoft has committed Call of Duty on other platforms, and this is it. I think this is where we see the first Call of Duty game on Nintendo hardware since, what was it, Black Ops 2 on the Wii U, going back all those years ago. I think it shows up at this direct.
Yeah, when you look at the support of Call of Duty on the Wii U, every version of Call of Duty was announced at a later date. None of them were announced alongside the other versions. It was always baffling that they kept these Call of Duty Wii U releases as some sort of huge secret. And if Black Ops 7 is to come to Switch 2, let's say day and date with the other versions, they're kind of running low on time to give it a reveal and announce a release date.
Yep.
So this feels as though it has to be the venue to make such an announcement if Black Ops 7 is to be day and date. Now, if the game is coming out, let's say early next year, it's slightly later than hoped, then I guess you do kind of buy yourself a little time and you don't necessarily have to announce it here. But beyond Call of Duty, I think games from Microsoft that they could announce here are titles like Age of Empires. Using the mouse con to control would definitely add a nice sense of balance to a console version of Age of Empires. Because one of the things that always turned me off from playing these games on such a platform is that I didn't want to use a gamepad. I didn't want to use analog sticks and then use the A, B, but standard controls because it didn't make any sense. Especially having played Age of Empires 2 back on PC in my youth. But now with the mouse com, it could feel very natural. It could feel as though I am replicating a PC type experience on a console. So I think Age of Empires is a great fit for Switch 2. And I think Microsoft will bring those games over. They are currently on PlayStation. So there's really no reason not to bring them over. Other titles from Microsoft that would be good fits for the system
Oblivion.
are, yes, Oblivion, the Oblivion remaster.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a state of how far is the port? Have they been able to work on the port yet?
Yep.
More than a case of will it come over? Like, yes, Oblivion naturally will find its way over eventually. It's just a question of when. I put out the tweet following Gamescom that Starfield is coming over in 2026. That will not be announced here. That will be announced at a later date alongside the PlayStation 5 version. So this isn't the time for it. But Microsoft has a wide array of games that would be good fits for Switch 2. It's just a question of, when and where will the announcement takes place. I think right now, Call of Duty makes sense. I think titles like Age of Empires makes sense. I'm not expecting anything else from Microsoft at this particular showing, though I do hope they have a big presence in it and surprise us. But I think going into 2026, we will really see Microsoft support ramp up and we'll have bigger announcements come from them in regards to Switch 2 releases. Now, one company I do want to touch on is NetEase, as they did announce that Marvel Rivals is coming to PlayStation 4 on September 12th, same day as the Direct. I think it's going to get a shadow drop on Switch 2.
Yeah, I like it. I think it'll get a shadow drop as well. And I think it'll be a pretty good announcement as well to see that. So I'm gonna go with you on that one and say yes.
Now, one company we do bring up in a lot of predictions episodes for both, well, all three, be it Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, are Remedy. Remedy is an exciting company. They did support the Switch with a port of Alan Wake 1, and then they did a cloud version of Control. Do you think Remedy shows up in this Direct with any support for Switch 2?
I do. I think Remedy hasn't had the best track record on the Switch. Let's be fair. Control was an interesting experiment, and I think in a vacuum you could say, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And the cloud tech around it was kind of cool, but no one was seriously going to invest money on a cloud game beyond just playing that like 60-minute demo that they had provided. Alan Wake on the Switch, Nate, we both looked at it. It was not a good port. Very ambitious and just needed a lot more work. So I think Remedy has decided that they're going to give us Alan Wake 2 on the Switch 2, which I think is a very good statement game and it'll be a good port. This time around, they're going to make sure that this game is running a lot better on Switch 2. It's also one of those games that NVIDIA likes to kind of show off as well as one of those marketing games like the Cyberpunk type thing. And it always appears in those graphs and those charts of frame rates and stuff like that. So which tells me that the game is quite scalable on ARM and small processors and various NVIDIA hardware. So I like Alan Wake 2 for the Switch 2. It's a good game, and I think a lot of the fans would be very happy to see it.
I would definitely be curious to see Alan Wake 2 on Switch 2, even just from a technical curiosity standpoint. The game was very ray trace heavy when it came out on other platforms, and I'd love to see how they are able to deliver that on Switch 2. And if they could deliver a competent version of Alan Wake 2, I potentially would be interested in double dipping for the right price. But, it's a tough one to predict for this particular direct. I mean, I could definitely see maybe a release along those lines, maybe as a complete version with
Mhm.
the DLC packs and such. Maybe it gets announced later in the year, maybe something like the Game Awards or the first direct of 2026. I do think Remedy at some point will show up on Switch 2. It's just a question of when and with what. Alan Wake 2, I think, would be a good introduction for them for the reasons you state. It's a good technical marvel. It would be a statement game. And then if we could see the Max Payne remakes come over when they're ready to release in the next couple of years, maybe a Control port
Mhm.
as Control 2 is in development, things like that, just to get fans accustomed to your games on the platform. So when you release new games, they are there and have interest in supporting you. But now I want to go to Sega. Sega, again, big supporter of the Switch 2 so far. They were at the partner showcase just over a month ago, where we had games like Yakuza be announced. We had a new look at Sonic Racing. A prediction I want to give here is that Sega will announce more installments to Yakuza, as well as the Like a Dragon series coming to Switch 2. As I believe everyone can figure at this point, they are going to drip feed these games, very similar to what they did with the Xbox releases. And basically, every version of Like a Dragon and Yakuza is coming to Switch 2 at some point. It's just a question of when will they release. So this is going to be, again, a drip feed type of release. But I think introducing fans to the Like a Dragon branch of the Yakuza games would be good to do this year. And it just keeps the franchise in the minds of people. You had a Yakuza game at launch. You have another one coming later this year. Now give us a Like a Dragon game, maybe in early 2026. And then every 2 to 3 months, give us another Yakuza and then a Like a Dragon game, kind of alternating between each other until you have the whole series on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, between Sonic and the Yakuza games, this is where Sega really is making a lot of money. Getting these games on Switch 2, drip feeding us those games makes a lot of sense. Like a Dragon, yeah, good prediction for sure. I'm going to agree with you on that one.
Now, do you have any wild out there Sega predictions?
So I've always said that the Sonic Adventure collection, which is Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, I've said this in previous predictions and it's never come true. So I'm going to bring that one back. So I'd like to see a Sonic Adventure collection with 1 and 2 in a double pack for, doesn't have to be much, like $30. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just, just straight ports. But that's my prediction. What about you? What about anything else from Sega? Like we just got Shinobi, of course, and there are those they call them those mega games that they're developing. There's Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio and stuff like that. So what do you think?
I feel like games like the Streets of Rage, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, I feel like those are things that Sega maybe want to keep to themselves in their own presentation. But on the topic of Dreamcast games, I would love to see Shenmue 1 and 2 come over to a Nintendo platform finally, especially with the announcement that Shenmue 3 is coming to the Switch family of systems or Switch systems. They didn't specify
Mm-hmm.
which Switch hardware. But if you're going to bring Shenmue 3, you should bring Shenmue 1 and 2. You have to be introduced to Ryo. You have to be introduced to the story, the characters. So you're invested and have reason to play Shenmue 3. Even though if you have played Shenmue 1 and 2, you shouldn't play Shenmue 3 because Shenmue 3 is a terrible game that advanced the story nothing. And it was kind of a waste of time and a waste of years. And I'm just going to end my love of Shenmue with the conclusion of Shenmue 2. Shenmue 3 does not exist. But if you're going to release Shenmue 3, give us the first two games.
Yeah,
So that's one of my Sega predictions.
I like
Shenmue
it.
1 and 2.
I like it. I like it. Shenmue 1 and 2, yeah. On the Switch, I'd probably double dip. Like I never bought the 1 and 2 that came out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. The last time I played Shenmue 2 was on the original Xbox, and I've played it on various emulators and stuff over the years. But I'd be down for a 1 and 2 double pack on the Switch too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of have to do that, which means we'll probably just get the announcement of Shenmue 3 coming to Switch 2 and a trailer that maybe shows some of the enhancements they promise. But unless the enhancements are to the story, it's just not going to be worth replaying. Very disappointed in you, Shenmue 3.
Not a good game.
Really isn't. But you know, it is a good game, and it comes from Square Enix. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Well, it's a good game for what it is. It's not a great remake in terms of what it is, but the port for the Switch 2 has been getting praise from both attendees at Gamescom and PAX West. They say the port of Final Fantasy VII Intergrade is very impressive, runs at a smooth frame rate, visuals are comparable to that of the PlayStation 5, and that is good news. All it needs is a release date. Do you think we get a release date for Final Fantasy VII Intergrade at this direct?
We do get a release date, and we get a deeper look at this game. Like you said, it did present very well. Looks like it's basically just locked its 30, and the visuals are very, very good. Certainly a lot better than Elden Ring in that regard. Overall, I think this is going to be a great port, and fans are very excited to see Final Fantasy VII on the Switch too. So yeah, this will definitely get a date. The question is, when is it coming out? I couldn't tell you. It's a tough one. Probably before the holiday, but what month will it show up? I don't really know. But what do you think? I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a date in mind for this?
I mean, Square Enix communication was winter,
Mm,
which for them, winter can really mean anywhere from December till February, even March. I think they will get it out this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the second half of November, yeah, or even early December. I do think it comes out before 2025 concludes. It's not a game I would double dip on. I've played Final Fantasy VII Remake plenty.
yeah.
Good game if you haven't played it yet, but it's not one of high interest for me. From a technical standpoint, I have interest just to see how it will run. So I'm hoping they give us that first mission demo that they gave every other release so
Yep.
we can play the bombing mission.
I think that probably will.
I imagine so because it transfer your save state over to the full game. And
Yeah.
I would download that again just as that curiosity of, oh, let's see how it runs. And how does it compare to the PlayStation 5 version of the game? You also have to keep in mind the game also has to be dated for the Xbox. So while this direct feels as though it is the proper venue to give it a release date, maybe Microsoft was able to secure it for their Tokyo Game Show presentation. Maybe money changed hands. But I think the direct makes more sense for Square Enix to announce a release date for such a game. Another game I'm going to predict from Square Enix at this direct is the first look and reveal to Dragon Quest VII HD. Now, you may recall this was leaked a few weeks ago in a report. So I think this is the good place to announce it. We have Dragon Quest coming out later this year with Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Well, let's see what's coming out for 2026 with Dragon Quest VII HD. Give us a nice trailer, get people hyped about the next thing for Dragon Quest as we await the eventual release and new look at Dragon Quest 12. But in the interim, is Dragon Quest 7 to tie us over.
Yeah, good prediction. And we heard some rumblings about games that have 7 in them. It's a good one. So I'm gonna agree with you on that one. Dragon Quest 7. I'm not the world's biggest Dragon Quest fan, so I'm not really that up to speed on these games, Nate. But I think Square Enix is definitely going to have a pretty big showing at this direct. So I like it.
Now, this is a game people have been asking me about. I feel every single day on social media, I give them the same answer every single time. And that is Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2. The game is coming to Switch 2. We discussed this back in June. And it's just a question of when will the announcement take place? Do you think this direct is the venue Rockstar has chosen to announce Red Dead Redemption 2 for Switch 2?
So on my notes before we recorded, I had this written down as one of those games. So I think it will be. I think it's time that we see Red Dead Redemption 2 on Switch 2. I'm only guessing that it's the same developer that did Red Dead 1, which I think it's Double 11 that's doing this port, because they did an absolutely stellar job with Red Dead 1. So, yeah, I think this game will show up at the Direct.
I mean, I hope it shows up at the direct because it gets people to stop asking me where it is. And it's one of those technical curiosity releases. I want to see how it looks and runs on the platform. I want to see what technical achievements they were able to bring to the platform, be it 4K. How good is the game going to look? How's it going to compare to the other versions? And again, it's kind of that statement game,
Yeah,
similar to like an Alan Wake or a Cyberpunk. It's a game that you can look to and say, wow, look what they achieved,
right.
especially
But
at this stage of the console's life cycle. Like, this is still the infancy.
but you have to remember, though, this game came out on the PlayStation 4 as well. That's the part that
True.
I always have to think back and remind myself of, that, yes, Red Dead 2 is a huge technical step up from Red Dead 1, right? But it's also a game that's been around for quite a while, and I don't feel like there's any reason why it wouldn't run well on a Switch 2. Is it going to run at 4K 60? Probably not. But I think it's going to look good and it's going to run well.
Man, I think that's all people really need. If they can look good, run well in portable and docked play, people will be happy with the release. And just to see Rockstar supporting the platform so early, I think is encouraging and would definitely give hope to maybe GTA 6 eventually finds its way to the platform.
Which will not
Hmm.
be at this Direct.
If GTA 6 showed up at this direct, then Nintendo could walk out for 59 minutes and just stare at the screen holding a banana. And people say, what is going on? And then it ends with GTA 6 coming to Switch 2 2026. And people would say that's the greatest direct I've ever seen.
That would be wild.
You know it's true, though.
What if it's the one more thing at the end?
Then bravo to Nintendo to get Rockstar showing up at a Nintendo Direct with GTA 6 Switch 2 announcement. I mean, that's one of those announcements that would just be legendary.
It would be, which is why it's not going to happen.
Unfortunately. But do you think anything else from Take Two and 2K could potentially be here?
Yes, I think Borderlands 4 will be at the Direct. We obviously know a lot about Borderlands 4. Again, I believe it was on the show floor at PAX, if I'm not mistaken. People were getting hands on with it. Look, the game is coming out, I think, this week on all platforms except the Switch 2, which I believe is coming out sometime in October. So it got just bumped just a little bit. Or maybe it was never day and date. I think maybe it was dated that way. But I think Borderlands 4 will be in this direct. It won't be of anything of major substance. I think maybe it'll just kind of show its face in like a sizzle reel or something like that. But Take-Two does have Borderlands 4 on deck for Switch 2. And again, you want that representation in a direct. So they'll be there with this game.
Now, the final third party company for predictions is going to be Ubisoft, as they've always been huge supporters of Nintendo platforms. And so far, they've been a little quiet on the Switch 2 outside of Just Dance and Star Wars Outlaws, which just released. And as I said earlier this year, we do have titles coming from them like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and just kind of a question of when will these be announced? And both of these games have made headlines very recently as Assassin's Creed Mirage is getting new content later this year. So it kind of feels as though that may be a good point in time to release the Switch 2 version as a content complete edition of Assassin's Creed Mirage. And Assassin's Creed Shadows, I believe, has been rated in certain countries. So that's just another matter of time. But some predictions I want to give include Mario and Rabbids Collection Switch 2 edition. So be both games or Switch 2, enhanced resolution, improved frame rate with mouse con control options. Because as you know, the game is grid based, so point and click, move the characters around a little quicker. I think that'd be a good announcement here. It also kind of ties in a little bit with the Mario 40th anniversary approaching later this month.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of have a little bit of relation there. I'm going to predict a Mario Rabbids Collection Switch 2 edition.
I like it. I think that's a very good prediction, especially with Mario's 40th anniversary as well. Having the mouse control for those games, I think, is genius, and it gives people that may have kind of overlooked Rabbids 2, which didn't sell anywhere near as well as Rabbids. Another opportunity to kind of jump in and give it another go. So I like it. I think it's a good double pack, good collection of games. Just on Assassin's Creed, real quick, I may kind of put my hand up and say Mirage may get a trailer at this direct. I feel like there's going to be something Assassin's Creed that shows up at this direct. And again, I don't really know why I would say that, other than I think about the Switch, and we got various Ezio double packs and Assassin's Creeds come out for the Switch, and they've always kind of shown up at these directs in the past where they've had a trailer of some Assassin's Creed game. So I think kind of just dipping your toe in the water with Mirage to get started is a good place. And I don't know, I think I like Mirage for this direct personally.
How do you really navigate these waters? Do you drop Mirage and Shadows on Switch 2 in close proximity, and then maybe you have Black Flag release early next year on all platforms, including the Switch 2? But then do you risk having too much Assassin's Creed on the platform in a very tight window?
Yeah, it's a good point.
So it's interesting at how they're going to approach the Assassin's Creed releases at this point. Like Black Flag, it exists. I don't think a Nintendo Direct would be the venue for it. I think that's something like a State of Play,
Right.
or the Game Awards is a proper venue for that caliber of game. But I want to see how Ubisoft really navigates Mirage and Shadows coming to Switch 2, which one they prioritize as release first, or even just announcement first, and then see how the games do. I think after Star Wars Outlaws has found a lot of success and impressed people from a technical standpoint, I think there's a sizable audience who's curious as to how Assassin's Creed Shadows will perform on the platform. And if it performs well and is technically competent, they'll have interest in it, maybe double dip or even just first time playing it. So Ubisoft definitely has a lot of potential for success if they're able to roll these games out in a wise fashion. The only other Ubisoft prediction I want to give is Rayman is celebrating his 30th birthday. And I'm going to predict that we are going to see a Rayman remake of some kind, maybe a collection of Rayman Origins and Legends. Though I personally would love a ground up remake of Rayman 2. It used to be the most heavily ported game in gaming history. Then they finally stopped doing it. But I think games like Rayman Origins or Rayman Legends coming to Switch 2 make a lot of sense. And I would love for them to get an announcement at this direct.
I love Rayman. So I'm going to say yes to this. I want to see Rayman I want to see Rayman on the Switch 2, and I want to see Rayman at the direct. I'm willing this one into existence with you.
You've been willing a lot of things into existence.
I have. The Switch 2 needs a little bit of willing. Let's be real. And I think this is the great the great venue for it, the direct.
I mean, that's fair. It's the first general direct since launch. So expectations are high and a lot of willing into existence are needed. But now we're going to get into the Nintendo side of the predictions episode. And I guess we can start with the big one. Metroid Prime 4. Will it release this year? What are your thoughts?
I think, well, obviously, Metroid Prime 4 will be at this direct. I think we all agree that it'll have a presence at this show. Now, I'm going to be a little bit controversial, Nate, and people may not like this, but I think that Metroid Prime 4 is going to slip out of 2025. I don't think its delay is going to be significant, but I think it may get bumped to, let's say, February of next year. The reason why I say that is something to me just feels off about Metroid Prime 4 at this point. I have no evidence. Oh, I don't know anything about what's going on development wise other than the things I've heard and the things I've read. But I don't know. Nintendo is treating Metroid Prime 4 just in a way where it just makes me feel like it's still not quite ready to launch this year, even though they have still committed 2025. But look, things slip, things change. So I think that the way that Nintendo is going to approach this is they will show us an extended trailer. Remember, this is a 60-minute direct, so they have a lot of time to showcase a lot of things. So we'll see an extended trailer, maybe with a couple of cool mechanics, maybe some new mechanics that we haven't seen before, to get fans of Metroid very much on board and excited once again that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a stellar game. And I think they're just going to just drop that 2026 date at the end of it. But I don't think it's coming out this year. I have no basis for saying that other than it's just my gut. Now, what do you think? How do you feel about Metroid Prime 4?
I think the game does come out this year.
I hope it does because I want to play it.
Will. I think it will make this year. I think it will be in that holiday window of November to December. I don't think anything has been really that odd about the approach or marketing of Metroid Prime 4 up to this point. The game was just playable very recently. And I believe it was at PAX West, and there was a Canadian fan fest where it was playable. And I know some people saying, well, why didn't they have a new demo? It takes time to build demos. The last demo was playable from April through June. They didn't have time to create a new demo, and it would be kind of irresponsible to suggest that they would need a new demo. So if I'm Nintendo, I think they've approached the marketing of the game fine. The game's been playable numerous times this year. And this isn't a game that needs a long marketing cycle. This is a game that right now they could go to the Nintendo Today app, say the game's coming out in November or December, and that would be more than sufficient.
Yeah.
It's not as though the game's being hidden in any way. It's just, people are anxious. They want a release date. So I do think it will make this year. And it's also a game that, though it is viewed by some fans as a significant release, I also think it's a game that Nintendo could put out there around another release without it really overshadowing or having any negative impact to the game. So if they want to release it a week after Pokemon Legends ZA, I don't think that hurts either game. It's catering to two different audiences.
Right.
I think the bigger thing is just finding a right place this holiday to release the game when you're viewing competition like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Ninja Gaiden 4, the bigger releases from the other studios. And I think there's plenty of open space in November and December to drop this game. And December is always a very big month for Nintendo when it comes to sales. So a game like Metroid Prime, let's say releasing the first week of December, it's going to find significant sales. If you put it in late October or November, it's still going to find the sales that it does because it's Metroid. It has its diehard fans that are going to show up day one. The bigger challenge for Metroid is just catering to an audience that isn't familiar with the game and the series. And Nintendo hasn't really been able to navigate that well. Metroid Dread, best-selling Metroid game of all time, but still, it's just barely over 3 million sales. It's not a huge seller. for them. So Metroid Prime 4, it may turn off some people because of that title, Prime 4,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it is the fourth entry to a series. So now, if you're not familiar with the original trilogy, maybe you're a little reluctant to invest in this, but I don't think that would be the case for the vast majority of people. I think it'd be a very minor percentage of interest that would be turned off because it's the fourth entry. But I think Nintendo can come out with a trailer in this direct, give a 2025 release, and all the concern that people have had, all the worry, will it get delayed? It's just for naught. The concern that it might be delayed, I think, largely just stems from this perceived silence that Nintendo hasn't been out there just hammering the game with directs dedicated to it, that they haven't been putting out tons of media. But that feels as though it's all done by design. Keep in mind, we just saw the game not that long ago, even in the direct. It was only in April. Yes, we're 4 months removed now. How many more times do people really want to see this game? Keeping in mind, we saw the game twice this year in directs.
Yeah.
Because we had the Switch 1 direct before the Switch 2 direct, where we saw Metroid Prime 4, and then we saw it again a week later. At some point, I think it does hit that oversaturation of, did we really need to see the game, let's say, 3 or 4 times by the month of June or July? I don't think so. I think waiting till September was fine. And 2025, I think, is still in play, and it will make this holiday.
Well, I hope you're right, because I want to be playing it this holiday.
So do I. So do I. I want to see if it was worth the entire Switch generation wait. Hopefully it was, because the last time we waited a while for a game that Nintendo announced back in 2017 was Bayonetta 3, and that
Oof.
was not worth the wait.
Wasn't the best. It was all right.
It was forgettable.
Yeah. Switch 2 made it somewhat better, but it was disappointing based on the amount of time we had to wait.
Yeah, unfortunately so. Now, another game that is definitely on the fringe of 2025 release is Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. This game seems ripe for a release date in this direct. Do you think it makes this year, or do you think this is one of those games that's going to find its way in early 2026?
I think it's probably going to come out this year, Nate. Maybe you mentioned November, maybe October for this. I think I don't see any reason why this game would not come out this year. So I'm going to say before the end of this year, we'll see Age of Imprisonment.
This is one of those releases I think they could put in close proximity to another one of their games, and it wouldn't really feel any detrimental impact, because I think the fans of Hyrule Warriors will be there. It's just the more casual audience that they're going to try to cater to the game to maybe would use their purchasing power on other things. But this is a game you can come back to in, you know, 3 months or so and say, oh, I was interested in this. Now I'll pick it up now that I've played Metroid Prime 4, now that I've played Pokemon, now that I've played the games I really wanted to play. Now I'll come around to Hyrule Warriors. But the initial wave of sales will be strong enough that they'd probably make their budget back. These aren't games with big budgets. They're very low investment affairs. So I think this is a game they could easily slot into that November window, and it would do fine. Now, one thing I want to touch on here is new game announcements before we get into like Mario's 40th and anything that could be related to that. For new game announcements, when we look back at the Switch, that first direct had a lot of new announcements. You had like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, stuff of that caliber, significant announcements. Right now, we haven't had any of those when it comes to Switch 2.
Yeah.
So, what brand new game announcements do you think Nintendo may have in store for us here?
Yeah, this is a tough question based on the fact that, you know, at the start of the show, Nate, you kind of said that the Switch 2 kind of felt like a continuation from the Switch. And I think a lot of what we're going to see from Nintendo is various Switch 2 editions, but we'll get back to that. If you're asking me what's new from Nintendo, I think you have to take a look at what was successful for the Switch, the games that kind of did well, and maybe ask yourself, well, what could we see on the Switch 2 that is a continuation or, following on from the momentum and success of what they did previously? And for me, there's one game that really stands out, and that is a new Luigi's Mansion game, Luigi's Mansion 4. Luigi's Mansion 3 was a very successful game on the Switch. It was a beautiful looking game, probably one of the best looking games on the hardware to this day. I think it's a gorgeous looking game, and it surprised so many people, not only in the way of its gameplay, that it was just so much fun to pick up and play and enjoy, but also in the way that it sold. It just kind of kept selling. It was just a very much an evergreen title for Nintendo that just kept, the legs of that game just kept going on and on. So I've thought about, what new games Nintendo could possibly show at this direct, and I think there's going to be some new announcements, right, of new games that are not Switch 2 editions. And you wonder, well, is it a new Mario game? It's possible, right? It's possible that the next Mario game, the next 3D Mario game could get announced. But we already just saw, Bonanza. And is it really time, to showcase or reveal a new Mario game, 3D Mario game? And then we know Metroid Prime 4 is coming, so that's obviously not a thing. Now, there's obviously also a new Zelda that you could throw out there. Say, well, maybe they're going to introduce the next installment in the Legend of Zelda series. That's also very possible. But I'm going to stick with my guns. I like Luigi's Mansion. I think it's a game that it was so good on the Switch, and yeah, we got the remake of the original game, or the remaster, I should say. But I think it's time for a new Luigi's Mansion. So that's my pick. What do you think? And am I talking crazy here, or do you think I'm saying stuff that has any merit at all?
I think Luigi's Mansion 4 is one of those inevitabilities. It's a solid prediction. It's just one of those games of where's it going to fall in the lineup in terms of timing. Like, is the 3D Mario game further in development than a Luigi's Mansion 4?
Hmm.
So, if you were to announce Luigi's Mansion 4 now, you probably don't announce the new 3D Mario game. If you were to announce the 3D Mario game now, you probably don't announce Luigi's Mansion 4. But again, it comes down to when would these games release?
Well,
I'd say it favors whatever game comes out in 2026.
right. I mean, I would say that Luigi's Mansion 4 would release, Halloween time frame for next year, right? And then maybe, if the Mario 3D game is further along in development, you reveal that. I mean, this is Mario's 40th, and I guess we have to think about that. But do you announce a 3D Mario game now for like a release over the summer next year, or do you kind of hold it further back? It's very hard for me to kind of think about it, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of thinking about Bonanza, that it's just too soon after the success of Bonanza to drop the new 3D Mario announcement. I kind of felt like anything 3D Mario would be 2026 as far as both a announcement and a release, but you know, I'm just speculating, of
Mhm.
course.
I mean, it comes down to kind of what we opened the episode with is that when you looked at Microsoft, Sony for this generation, and Nintendo in past generations, is that they like to announce games that are 2 or even 3 years out because you want to generate that hype. You want to generate that interest in your brand and your product and show a promising future of releases. So let's say 3D Mario was 2026, just to give it a time frame, and Luigi's Mansion was first half 2027.
Hmm.
If you want to announce them now, I think you could without any real harm because you would have those dates those very vague dates at the end, say, okay, there is time of separation between them of one's 2026, one's 2027, and we won't see them again until closer to release. The issue is we don't know if Nintendo is going to approach this direct in such a fashion because we've had a very limited marketing window where all the games coming to Switch 2 so far.
Right.
Mario Kart World was only announced in, I mean, technically April.
In April, yeah.
Donkey Kong was only announced in April. These are games that only had 3 to 4 months of marketing. It was a very tight window. So is Nintendo going to employ a similar marketing approach to games, or are we going to see long-term teases? If we get long-term teases, I would say that my prediction for a brand new game announcement will be whatever Monolith is doing next,
Hmm.
because that could be a game that even if it's coming out in late 2026, if you announce it now, it's just to generate hype to say, okay, Monolith is working on a brand new game. It's deep enough into development that they can announce it now. We get our first look. We'll see it again sometime next year, and then it's coming out before the end of next year, just as an example.
Do you think the Monolith game is another Xenoblade game, or do you think it's a new IP?
I personally hope it's a new IP. I'd like to see them branch away from Xenoblade Chronicles for a little while. But if it was a continuation of Xenoblade Chronicles, it also wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
But I would favor a new IP.
same.
So, like, if that's like where my thought process for like a new game goes, how far in advance do they want to tease something at this stage? Another announcement I think that we will see here, it's not necessarily a brand new game, but it would be a brand new announcement, is downloadable content for Donkey Kong Bonanza, as you brought up.
Hmm.
I think that game will get DLC in some form. It's just a question of what's the right form for them to do. I don't think adding an extra layer for us to destroy and a new bonanza animal would necessarily be the most engaging or exciting DLC they could do. I think you want to do something a little different. So my personal hope would be do more of the 2D levels in the vein of Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah,
Like we got a small appetizer of that in the game, kind of throwback levels. I think if you did a DLC that has that nostalgia value, that nostalgia appeal, I think that would resonate with a lot of people who grew up and are familiar with Donkey Kong Country because we had that little glimpse of it in those Bonanza stages, but there weren't enough. I would have loved an entire layer that was dedicated to those types of stages. So if you gave me that as a DLC pack, that would get me very excited to return to Bonanza because personally, it felt as though it was the game you played, you beat, and you didn't really come back to. At least on my end, in my opinion. I know others will say, I went back, I won 100% of the game. That's awesome. But I did see a lot of people where they kind of got to the late bonanzas. They got some of the late bonanzas and they're like, yeah, I'm getting kind of bored of this repetition. So I think the DLC has to go on a different path. I think it has to offer something a little different than what the main game offered.
yeah, I agree. I like Bonanza a lot. I think it was a fantastic game, but I kind of got bored after I beat the game. I think I ended up maybe with 650 bananas, all said and done. I did some of the post game content, but I kind of just got bored and I haven't played it since. But I will say I loved those throwback levels, those 2D throwback levels, and I kind of hope there was more in the game. So if they are kind of, thinking about a DLC that is basically Donkey Kong Country, then sign me up. I would definitely jump on board that. That would be fantastic. But I mean, they already have the music tracks already available, so it's just a matter of building or fleshing out those levels and building some type of DLC around it. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to see what path they do choose to do for Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC because the game just feels as though it's definitely a game that can be expanded upon with some DLC. And I think this direct is a good venue of choice to announce some future DLC plans for the game. But it's also a good place to announce, I don't know, maybe give a roadmap to Mario Kart World DLC or
Mhm.
future content updates, because that's definitely a game that it needs some sort of update. it needs an injection of energy.
It seems like it doesn't. I mean, it's still selling incredibly well, and I think it's kind of on track, and Nintendo's happy with the sales and everything. But there's just something missing with Mario Kart World. I mean, I've played. Last time I checked my play time, I think I played about 30 hours of that game. I've definitely gotten my fix of Mario Kart World. I've beaten a lot of races. I've come first in a lot of the knockout tours. It's a very enjoyable game, but there's just something missing with Mario Kart World, I feel like. And um, hopefully, Nintendo is aware of that and they can provide some updates to that game.
I think even just new variants on the modes, introduce some new online multiplayer options like traditional eight
Yeah.
player racing, um, no item knockout mode, and just some
250cc.
minor things. Yeah, 200cc, just minor things here and there to create a little more variety and randomness to it. But I mean, hopefully we get something with Mario Kart World in this direct. Now, one thing I do want to touch on are Switch 2 editions. Do you think Nintendo announces a new wave of Switch 2 editions?
Yes, I do. I think this is, unfortunately, for better or for worse, this is going to be a lot of this. Not a lot of the direct, but it's going to be a portion of the direct and probably future directs in the foreseeable future. I think Switch 2 editions of Switch 1 titles it's almost a no-brainer, right? Like think about, enhanced PS5 versions of PS4 titles. It's a very, very similar business model, and it's a good one too, right? Like it gives people an opportunity to check out a game that maybe they didn't get a chance to, or play an enhanced version of a game that they love, or basically have a 4K version of a classic game that they really liked. So there's definitely some games that could very easily show up as Switch 2 editions. I think it's really a matter of, do the developers have enough time to prepare Switch 2 edition games? Because obviously, a lot of development studios are busy just making new games. So even kind of curating and preparing Switch 2 editions requires some developer time, it requires resources, it requires money. So it's not just a simple matter of doing this very cheaply. But having said that, there's definitely some games that I feel like could see a Switch 2 edition. And because we are talking about Mario's 40th anniversary, the one that comes to mind for me, Nate, would be Mario Wonder, a Switch 2 edition of that, which potentially could have some updated content. I don't know what that would entail. Maybe just some a whole new kind of section of the game that wasn't in the original, with some extra stages and extra challenges, and potentially some enhanced visuals as well. I know there's already a Switch 2 patch for it. I think that does a lot of that stuff. But if you give it that Switch 2 edition with just, with that upgrade path, with, enhanced levels, or sorry, with new levels, and enhanced visuals, for me, that's probably the low hanging fruit, if you will. What about you though? What do you think would see a Switch 2 edition? There's a lot of titles they could pick from, but what are you thinking?
I think a title like Mario Wonder is definitely a given. I think titles like Pikmin 4 and Nintendo Switch Sports
Hmm.
are also ripe for Switch 2 editions because all Switch 2 edition really is, as you mentioned, an enhanced Switch 1 game with some DLC and new content. So with Pikmin 4, you can definitely do some new content, and
Yep.
with Switch Sports, give some new sports. We waited a long time for them to add basketball and stuff of that nature. So add a few more sports to the game. And I think you definitely have some interest from people. And it also fills that void of, okay, now we don't need to give them a new Switch Sports game on Switch 2. We gave it to you, the Switch 2 edition. So I think those games make a lot of sense for Switch 2 editions. But beyond that, Nintendo obviously could still have a lot more in this direct. And I want to go to NSO. You think we get a NSO drops in this direct and of any kind? We did just have Forsaken come to N64 NSO. We are technically due a GameCube NSO drop, as that has been monthly. What do you
Yeah,
think we see in this direct on the NSO front?
I think so. I mean, September Direct, usually they give us some type of updates with NSO. I don't expect anything massive here. Like, if you're expecting like a new system, a new hardware platform to show up, I would say no, not at this point. I think GameCube has, it just feels like GameCube has just started. Like what we have 4 games, 5 games maybe available for it. It's not many. So I think they want to flesh out that GameCube library first before we think about what's next. Um, so yeah, I mean, Forsaken just did come out, but there was some kind of screenshot leak where there were more games like Donkey Kong 64 and various other titles. I think DK64 is definitely coming to NSO, and I think it's coming soon. So personally, I like DK64 for NSO, even though we did get Forsaken. I mean, it's Forsaken. It's a very niche game. If you like games like Descent and you like those acclaim games from the 2000s, then you'll enjoy Forsaken. But a lot of people probably don't even know what Forsaken was. So I think DK64 is a lot more popular with a lot more people, and it's a very polarizing game. So I think showing up at Direct with DK64 kind of makes sense. People are going to either laugh at it or going to be very happy to see it. So I like that for the Direct. As far as GameCube, look, there is a ton of games that could show up for NSO, and it's tough kind of predict what it could be. It's very easy to say, well, what about Mario Sunshine because it's Mario's 40th anniversary? Well, I feel like Nintendo has plans for that, and we'll come back to that because I want to talk about that in more detail. I think it's going to be something that isn't as popular as Mario Sunshine. Personally, I'm going to just throw this out there, Nate. I'm going to say Star Fox Assault is the next game on GameCube NSO. But what do you think about NSO? Will NSO have an updated presence at the Direct? And if so, what games do you think will appear?
I think it would have some kind of update, even if it's just to announce some games, not necessarily coming this week, but later this month or even early next month. I think GameCube NSO drop would be the prime thing to have in this direct. And no, that's not a hint at Metroid Prime 2. I think the next game for like the GameCube, we have the detailed roadmap, but I kind of think the next GameCube game is going to be something that isn't on that roadmap just
Yep.
for a random reason. It's not going to be Metroid Prime 2. It's probably not going to be anything too exciting.
That's why I
But
said
it's going to
Star
be,
Fox Assault.
yeah, it's definitely not exciting.
It's a good game, but it's not like,
It's okay. It didn't have great ground controls.
yeah.
Like the single player was serviceable. The multiplayer was supposed to be that big appeal of the game, and the game controlled with tank controls. It just wasn't great. Yeah, I think we get the next GameCube NSO drop here. Maybe a look at what's next for N64. Like you said, Donkey Kong 64, I think would be a good pick. But beyond that, I don't think too much of a focus on NSO in this particular direct. Like, we're not going to get new hardware announcements at this
Mm-mm.
point because we just got the GameCube. So I feel as though it's a little too soon to announce something in the vein of DS or Wii. I think that's something you would wait a little later into the Switch 2 life cycle to announce. So maybe next year we would see new hardware get added. But it depends, obviously, how quick the development is coming on those emulators and stuff like that to bring over those platforms. But beyond NSO, we do have to touch on the big thing, Mario's 40th anniversary. What will Nintendo do here? How will they approach it? How will they discuss it, if in any capacity? I think Mario's 40th will have some presence here, it will be acknowledged. And I think it's going to be acknowledged in the form of Mario Galaxy 2 coming to Switch 2.
Yes, I agree. And I mentioned Mario Sunshine, and I said we'll talk about that shortly. I think we're basically saying the same thing, but maybe in a different way. So Mario Galaxy 2 is a part of Nintendo's 40th anniversary plans for Mario. I think it will be announced at this direct, but I'm going to take it a little further, Nate. I'm not going to just end with Mario Galaxy 2. I'm going to say that Nintendo is going to bring out 3D All Stars again for another round. Obviously, 3D All Stars was a physical, a limited physical release, and a limited digital release that really made a lot of people unhappy, myself included, because I didn't like the way Nintendo basically just decided that they would just, put an end date on that and let a lot of people that came into the Switch ecosystem after the end date of Mario 3D All Stars, they didn't give them an opportunity to jump in and enjoy the classic Mario games, right? So I think they're going to bring it back, and we'll just call it Mario 3D All Stars Part 2 or Mario 3D All Stars Switch 2 Edition, whatever you want to call it. It'll be 3D All Stars with the inclusion of Galaxy 2. And I think I'm not sure if it'll be a physical or a digital. It'll probably be, it could be both, but I think that's Nintendo's plans for Mario's 40th, Mario Galaxy 2, and 3D All Stars. I think all three of those things will show up at this direct.
I could definitely see them doing a 3D All Stars with Galaxy 2 release. I think it would be exclusive to Switch 2,
Yep.
just to provide that incentive of you need a Switch 2 to play this game. And it creates a greater sense of urgency and need, or essentially FOMO. Because if you were to bring that to the Switch, I think it loses a little bit of its appeal to collectors and that FOMO. So I could definitely see them going that path with such a release.
Yeah.
Beyond that, for Mario's 40th, I mean, maybe you get that mention of what's next for 3D Mario. But again, that ties into that Luigi's Mansion 4 type of prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel it's one or the other. So if they go heavy, or even like the Mario Wonder Switch 2 edition, I think that also kind of plays a role into Mario's 40th.
Yeah, definitely.
It's under that umbrella.
I think so.
I think Mario Galaxy 2 would be that big announcement, because that's a title that they could feasibly shadow drop. Like, here's Mario Galaxy 2 standalone, let's say, for $20 on the eShop, available right now. Or you can wait a month and you can get Mario 3D All Stars with Mario Galaxy 2 at retail for $40 or $50.
Yeah.
Maybe they go even higher. Maybe they go 70. But I could see that type of rollout for such a release. And I think, the Mario fans definitely be very excited. Mario Galaxy 2 is a great game. I could see them do something more. I just couldn't predict what it would be. Just kind of surprise us with something of like, wow, wasn't expecting that for Mario's 40th anniversary. But, Nintendo has a lot of options available to them for this direct, especially when it comes to Mario's 40th. Because anything related to Mario, they like to incorporate into Mario's 40th. So let's say there's a Mario sports game like baseball or whatever. That could technically fall into Mario's 40th anniversary celebration.
Yeah.
Or could we get a random eShop or an NSO only game like Mario 35 that we had that Nintendo then discontinued? Now it's Mario 40th.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe we get an experimental game like that that's a limited release. But I'm curious to see how Nintendo really does approach it with things beyond releases like a Mario Wonder Switch 2 edition, which is a fine release in its own right. I think Mario Galaxy 2 is kind of where I'm going in terms of a big release from Nintendo for the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, I agree. Makes a lot of sense. A lot of people were wondering where was it when 3D All Stars came out. I just feel like they've always kind of had this in their back pocket for this particular event and Switch 2.
Now, there is one game I need to bring up because I know people are going to ask me about it. Fire Emblem. Do I have a prediction for Fire Emblem? And you know what? I am going to make a prediction for Fire Emblem, but it's not going to be a Fire Emblem 4 remake. we're going to get a definitive edition or a deluxe edition of Fire Emblem Three Houses for Switch 2. So it's going to be an improved version of Three Houses exclusive to Switch 2. It's not going to be a Switch 2 edition. It'll have additional content. It'll only be available on Switch 2. That's my prediction there. It will disappoint Fire Emblem fans that it's not Fire Emblem 4, though that does exist. But I'm going to predict Fire Emblem Three Houses Deluxe Edition, Switch 2.
I'm not the world's biggest Fire Emblem fan, but I did actually enjoy Three Houses. So I'd be okay with that personally.
Now it comes into the will it into existence.
My favorite
of the
my
show.
favorite part.
Well, you've willed already half the games into existence, so I'm not sure what else there is for you to will into existence at this point.
Well, I have two games I wanted to will into existence. One is a first party and one is a third party. So my first party will into existence is a new F-Zero game. I think we've talked about this before. Obviously, F-Zero GX on the GameCube NSO is just quality. You and I, we've played it online. It's a little janky, let's be real. The netcode is still very much just all over the place. And Nintendo still needs to fix their emulation. It's just a little too sensitive. But a new F-Zero game is something I've wanted for years. And, we've heard rumblings about a new F-Zero over the years. So I'm going to will into existence that Nintendo will grace us with a brand new F-Zero game exclusively for the Switch 2. So I'm very excited about that. And for my third party will into existence, Nate, Chrono Trigger. I want to see Chrono Trigger for the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't want HD 2D remake because, I don't know, I feel like a lot of these games now are using that style and maybe it's just lost a little bit of its charm personally. I just want Chrono Trigger. So just bring it back. It could just be the standard game. You don't touch anything. Just make sure it's nice and pixelated. It looks good. Maybe throw in some extras. Maybe a remastered soundtrack. Some additional content as well. But Chrono Trigger for me would be awesome. What are your will into existence games? Let's hear what you got.
My first party will into existence game is going to be a look at the next entry to The Legend of Zelda. We will see a brand new game from Zelda be revealed at the Nintendo Direct.
Could happen.
Be it a remake of a classic game, like an Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, or just the next 3D installment. On a third-party will into existence game, and this is just being willed into existence because I'd find it funny, is Black Myth Wukong. I would just find it funny for that to come to Switch 2 after the whole debacle of it coming to Xbox and how the developers blamed Xbox Series S, and then to see it come to Switch 2 would just make me laugh. So that's kind of my will it into existence for chaos.
That'd be really awesome. I haven't played Black Myth Wukong, and I think if it did come to Switch 2, Nate, I'd probably jump on it as long as it was a solid port.
I mean, the port to the Xbox wasn't great, so I really can't imagine it would be a solid port to the Switch 2. But hey, miracles are always possible. But that will conclude our Nintendo Direct predictions episode. It went twice as long as the Direct itself. But a lot of interesting predictions, I think, were made here. A lot of good points were brought up. And I'd like to thank MVG for joining me, as always.
Always a pleasure, Nate. Thanks for having me on. And hopefully this will be a good Direct. I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be a good one.
Yeah, it's definitely very hopeful that it will be a good Direct. Definitely curious to see how Nintendo will approach Mario's 40th anniversary in terms of announcements and just announcements in general. What will 2025 look like for Nintendo Switch 2? And what type of look will Nintendo give us into 2026 for Nintendo Switch 2? Will it include new announcements from Monolith, a 3D Mario game, Luigi's Mansion 4, a new Zelda game? Hopefully we get answers to these questions in this upcoming Direct. We will have a reactions episode available early next week after we are able to view the direct and stew on our thoughts and reactions to the show itself. But until next time, continue to embrace the hate.
With Nate and MVG, dissecting all the lies. Nate the hate, rocking hard, MVG, dropping knowledge bombs. Best podcast sitting strong, guiding us where we belong. Through the pixels and the codes, breaking down what future holds. Nate and MVG, showing us the gaming gold.